Hey everybody, welcome back to Simply Sarissa, and today we have a little bit of a review slash first impressions of Invisalign. So let's get right into all the details. I am 44 years old. I have never had braces in my life, and it was time. My dentist said I really needed to get my teeth aligned and get them on the right track because we were starting to see some issues and they were only going to get worse. Add to that, I really was needing some night guards because I was doing a lot of jaw clenching and starting to get soreness in my jaw and mouth area. So I decided to research and invest in Invisalign because I thought it would kind of be a kill two birds with one stone situation. So to get right into how it all went, I just want to give you some tips and a little bit of how the process goes, and I'll show you some of the product as well. First of all, we want to talk about cost. It is more expensive than traditional braces for the most part. So one tip is you may want to consider shopping around, finding a very reputable orthodontist or dentist, and then consider if you don't have insurance that's going to cover most or all of the cost, consider finding one that maybe does in-house financing and interest-free financing. So then you can budget for it and it can become like a very regular monthly bill for you, and then you don't have to pay interest. The next thing that you're going to want to consider before you even consider Invisalign at all is your personality. So consistency is key with Invisalign. You can take them out, and that can be a good thing, but it can also be a very bad thing. If you are inconsistent or you misplace things all the time, Invisalign might not be for you. Also, you have to think about cleaning. These operate much like retainers would, and so they are complete and full trays which collect saliva and germs and bacteria. They need to be cleaned all of the time. So you want to consider whether or not that's something you're willing to do multiple times a day. You're also going to want to take into account your eating and drinking habits. Now, for example, this changed my eating and drinking habits tremendously. I'm the type that gets up in the morning and sips on coffee for 2 to 3 hours throughout the morning. And somewhere in between there, I generally eat breakfast and then I move on with my day. Well, you have to have these in for 22 hours, like I said. So if I have them out for 2 to 3 hours in the morning, then I've spent all my time that I can have them out for the day, and I'm actually running in a deficit. So I had to consider changing my drinking and eating habits. These have to come out every single time anything enters your mouth other than water. So that means you need to consider maybe an hour in the morning to drink your coffee and have a breakfast, and then put them back in, and then maybe take them out for a little while for lunch, and then take into consideration whether or not you have long, lengthy dinners and desserts, and how often you snack throughout the day. Considering today's climate, you may want to think about how often you're going to want to take these in and out. If you're having to go to a restaurant or something like that in a public setting, maybe even work, you want to make sure that you have a clean and sanitized area, that you can wash your hands, that you can properly clean your retainers your Invisalign, and then also to be able to brush your teeth. So take all of that into consideration before you think about getting these. Okay, next we're going to get into the process of actually getting Invisalign after you've taken all those other checklists into consideration. I had my x-rays and my consultation where they said that we could go forward for that period in time. Then after that, you basically have to have your teeth mapped and impressions taken. And the way that I would explain that is they use sort of like a wand. It's something that they use similar in certain ultrasound situations. And so they have to crank open your mouth, and then after doing impressions and x-rays, they have to kind of use it quite a bit in your mouth to basically map your teeth and your mouth structure from the inside, and it kind of takes images, pictures, so that they can send that off to Invisalign. It's about a 5-week turnaround time. Unlike braces where you go in and they basically make the appointment and put them in, Invisalign actually have to be made catering to you personally. So once they get all those impressions, they actually have to create a prescription, then send it off to Invisalign to actually create your molds just for you. And that they will be installing anchors into your mouth. Now I'm going to pause this just for a second, pull out my Invisalign, and then I'll try to get a close-up and show you what the anchors are and then talk to you about how they install them. And you have to know everyone's anchors are going to be unique to them, because the anchors are going to be what helps hold the Invisalign in place and get it to exactly where you need it to go for your particular teeth. So I'm just going to give you some basic examples of ones that are really close up for me that you can see. Okay. Oh, this might be hard. If you can see this sticking out right here, this is definitely an anchor right here. And then, can you see that popping out a little bit here? That's another anchor. So they are the same color as your teeth. I have a lot of anchors in. I have these ones, I have some next to them, and then they're not on every single tooth, but I do have them on the outer portion of both top and bottom on several teeth. Now, explaining the anchors, they are a process that when your Invisalign comes in and you go back to your orthodontist or doctor, they actually have to take the time to install these anchors. And because they're so small, they're basically on like a preset form for your mouth. Then they have to go through a little bit of a process with like lights and cement and all of that. And they get them onto certain portions of your teeth. And then once that dries, they have to kind of like crack the mold off of those areas, and it leaves the anchors on each section. And it does take probably, I would say, around 20 minutes or so, if probably done well. Then, so it is a process, and they do have your mouth cranked open the whole time. And they pop all of those on, cement them on, make sure they're where they need to be. And then they grab your first set of Invisalign and they help you put them in. They're gonna come in boxes like this. And this one is basically 10 sets of Invisalign. And then you kind of slide the box open and they come in these little packets. So basically the packets look very similar to this. They're just little like Ziploc baggies, and they have really good information on them. They have what, like upper, lower, number 1 of 20, number 2 of 20, that kind of thing. I'll get into that in a second. So then you she pops open the first set for you, or he, and you end up with basically a pair of what look like retainers. And so these plastic forms, you can tell they're solid. Quick detail is they have little markings on them, and these markings you can actually feel with your tongue. So when you have these in, if you move it around the edge of your Invisalign, you can actually feel these little markings. I'm not for sure exactly what they are, but that's okay. Not something I probably need to know anyway. And then you're going to get one set of these basically per week. So they say like 7 to 10 days. I'm on the fast track, so I'm gonna have to change mine every 7 days. So I have currently 20 sets in my Invisalign boxes right now. I had 2 boxes. The last tip I wanna let you know about the anchors is that they are not comfortable. So in essence, I believe that they probably made them partially that way to encourage you to keep your Invisalign in, because the longer I go without having my actual Invisalign in, these little anchors pop out and they are a little bit rough, and they also kind of scratch the inside of your mouth. So again, it encourages you to wear these so that this doesn't bother you so much. The next part of the process is, again, taking care of your retainers, especially when you're out and about and as far as cleaning goes. They did send me home with this really pretty box that has some information on Invisalign. It also has cleaning crystals, which I believe you kind of add to water of some sort. They have directions on them, and then you can soak your Invisalign in them to kind of deodorize and clean them and to keep them looking clear, because I've been told that they can turn a little bit yellow on you, but because I only do mine every 7 days, I haven't noticed that yet. Then you also get a little case. I got a really nice one, and this case works really well, of course, if you're gonna go out to eat or if you're out and about for the day, have to go to work or whatever. You need a good safe spot to keep your Invisalign to make sure you're not leaving them or misplacing them or having to put them in something that's unsanitary. So you're always going to want to have that on hand. Also going to want to have dental floss, maybe like a to-go toothbrush, and a small toothpaste with you at all times. I basically just have a little bag in my purse that, you know, has all my little necessities, and I've had to add these to it so that I'm kind of never caught off guard. And in a pinch, if I don't have this, I at least have a little case that has other things in it, but at least it's a safe spot for me to put my Invisalign in so that they're not just floating around in my purse or some other gross place. Let's talk about how they feel. As far as soreness goes, yes. They were definitely sore. I got mine first thing in the morning and I came home, and by later afternoon, I was definitely needing some ibuprofen to get through that initial several hours and to get that first good night's of sleep with that. And for the first few nights, I also slept on my back with my head elevated a little bit. I just wanted to kind of reduce any inflammation, and I didn't want to like push on my mouth or my gums and hurt anything anymore. So I kind of just took all that into account for the first few days and kind of babied the area. You will also be sore when you change sets. So again, every 7 days, I'm getting kind of a new set and I'm getting sore all over again, and it takes a couple of days to adjust. I would say it's never 100% comfortable, but usually with like the end of day 2 through day 7, it's a lot more comfortable, and these have kind of loosened, I wouldn't say loosened up, but adjusted enough and kind of softened a tiny bit so that they don't hurt tremendously at all. But it is definitely noticeable, and there's really never a time that I don't know that I have them in my mouth. You also need to know that because of the way that they are set up and because they are a foreign body in your mouth, things are going to be uncomfortable for the inside of your mouth and for your tongue. I am now currently on week 2 of this, and my tongue is still very tender and very sore. At one point it was very red, and I've noticed when I change sets that I got a whole new level of kind of like almost like a scratched feeling on the inside of my mouth. And I suspect that's going to happen for quite a while until my mouth really gets used to things, maybe a month or 2 in, and is just like, oh, okay, forget it, we're used to this now. But it's definitely a process, and it definitely always leaves my mouth a little bit tender and my tongue a little bit sore. So probably gonna notice about when you do eat, your teeth are gonna feel really kind of funny and loose because they're so used to being secured that when you take them out to eat, they feel soft and more tender and kind of loose. So I didn't even realize I was doing this, but I am choosing foods that are not so hard to eat. So for example, I'm leaning a lot more towards scrambled eggs and like avocados, tofu, you know, things that like I haven't really eaten a big steak since all this happened. And it's not something that I intended on doing and that I'm even actually aware of or purposely doing. It just seems to happen. It's like my body's way of saying, hey, let's protect your mouth. Let's kind of eat softer things. So just be aware of that with your diet. The last thing I want to say about soreness and actual mouth is your taste buds. For some reason, and this may just be me, my taste buds have dramatically been affected by this. And I think partially it's because my tongue has experienced some trauma from this whole thing. And so during the day, especially if I haven't had anything to eat for a while, I can't hardly taste anything, which also leads to not knowing if I have bad breath or not. And then when I do eat, I'm noticing that my palate is not quite as advanced as it normally is, and foods don't quite have the same taste that they normally do. Okay, now we're gonna get into what I call the weird section, just things that I really had no idea to expect and that they have just come up. So the first thing is there's a lot more spit in my mouth that I'm noticing, and I think it's because it's being trapped inside these trays. And so you will probably get used to that feeling, and you'll find your own way of kind of like getting it out and swallowing and figuring out how to adjust for that. But just know that it feels like you're swallowing like a lot more, and it feels like there's a lot more spit in your mouth. And so you will catch yourself kind of like, maybe the mask will be a good thing. Let's just say that for a little while. The next one is obvious. It's that your speech will change. And I'm sure that you have noticed, and even in my last maybe 1 or 2 videos, my voice is a little bit different. My mouth and my talking style has changed quite a bit. And it's a little bit of like a lisp. It doesn't bother me at all, quite frankly. It may bother other people that have to hear me. I don't know, but it's funny, the paperwork said that that would go away after a few days, and I just really don't see that happening because there is a foreign object in my mouth and it's collecting a lot of saliva. So, and my mouth doesn't shut and my teeth don't clench the way they used to. So I suspect I'm going to sound a lot like this until I'm done with my full process. Following along with the way that your speech changes, it's the same thing as far as how your mouth is set up now and also how your teeth clench. So my teeth no longer shut all the way. And by nature, they can't clench the way they used to. And then because of my teeth and my anchors, my lips kind of protrude a little bit, so my mouth doesn't quite shut all the way either. So that's going to be something that you're going to have to kind of adjust to and get used to. But I will say, if you are a jaw clencher or you're a teeth grinder, these things are just like night guards, and I have not experienced any jaw pain since wearing these, so that was a huge bonus for me. The next tip as far as your mouth and the kind of weird thing is, I'm going to say that lip balm is going to be your best friend. Now, I always now have this with me, like at all times. This is basically Aquaphor in just a little tub that I can keep in my pocket. But of course, you can use any lip balm or chapstick, whatever it is that you're comfortable with. I would just suggest that you make sure you have something with you, because your mouth is always a little bit more open, and because of the different shifting of your lip placement, it just feels dry a lot more. And when you're having to crank open your mouth to pull these things out and put them in, if your lips are dry, that's gonna hurt, and I wouldn't want any cracking on my lips, or to get any kind of sores or canker sores from that. So I definitely have my lips like really fully balmed all the time. Now, a funny one that I don't notice all the time, but if you're a singer or you yell or you're in a position where you have to protrude your voice a lot, or project, I'm sorry, then you may experience some like vibration. I guess by nature, it's just because of the air pushing out and the vibration of your voice. It kind of makes your Invisalign vibrate a little bit, and it kind of vibrates your teeth. Totally unexpected. And the first time I like belted out a song and was singing, I was like, what is that? So just be forewarned, that may happen to you. The next thing I have to say is that these are not the easiest to take out and put in. Now, for you that really want to know how this goes, I will put a little clip at the very end of this that shows me trying to pop them out, just to show you that even in trying to do it as politely as possible, it's still a process. And my first couple of days of doing it, they were so tight in my mouth that I actually broke a fingernail trying to pop these out. So just know that this isn't something that you can just like click on your tongue and slide it out really quickly, or if you're at a restaurant and you're caught like at the table, you can't just kind of go like this, pop them out and move. It's not gonna work that way. You have to like literally get in there, work one off, pull it out, and then get into the second one. This last tip is probably the grossest one, but hey, I have to say it because it's so needed and necessary, is your breath. You're going to have to check your breath and make sure that you clean these things regularly. I went as far as to make my husband promise me that if my breath gets a little bit funky, he needs to tell me, and I promised not to get offended by it. And it's just because, again, my taste buds have been affected, my mouth is open a lot more, I have to do a lot more mouth, I'm noticing I'm mouth breathing a little bit more. It just has shifted everything, and I don't want bad breath. So make sure you have somebody that can kind of tell you if you do, and hopefully you won't have the same experience as I have. But again, make sure that you're constantly brushing, that you're constantly cleaning these things, and that you have somebody that can be super honest with you around. Okay, this does it for me for my first impression / product review of Invisalign. I promise that I will do another check-in. It'd probably be a lot shorter, but I just wanted to get all the details out of like experiences and what I didn't know going into this. So probably the check-in will be in about maybe anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on how my Invisalign progresses. And yeah, that should be it for today. If you have any questions or comments or tips for me as far as Invisalign, or if you're like, woman, what is going on? I don't care what the comment is. Just let me know below. I'd really appreciate it. And before you leave, I'd really appreciate it if you hit like and subscribe on this video. And until next time, I'll see you soon. I'm about 4 days in, and this is still a process. First soda. Woo. Okay, second set out. And that was as polite and as clean as I could make it. Let me wash my hands.